Good morning, America. Hubert Johnson here with Taxes Made Easy. Just following up with, we're going to follow up with the topic about home ownership. There are a lot of struggles out there, especially for new homeowners. And the question is, how can they afford to buy a home with prices going through the roof, prices higher than ever? That was just reported. We talked about that yesterday. So how do people still manage to get into the housing market? Because once you get into it, it's like you get your foot in that door, you start building some equity, and from then it's easier to stay in it. So, again, an important topic, especially for younger people, but also older people that have struggled and are still renting and haven't been able to. Welcome back, everybody. And we've got some interesting stories today. The first one is Boeing, Boeing, Boeing. Oh my gosh, what is going on with them? It sounds like there's maybe it's because everything's coming out of the woodworks because of their history, because of the problems they've been having. But geez, this is not pretty. So, got a couple Boeing articles. One I was just gonna ignore. I didn't mention it yesterday, but again, another United airline. This is a United airline flight, but a Boeing jet loses its wheel, and it's almost kind of hilarious if it wasn't so dangerous. Um, Lost landing gear wheel during takeoff from Los Angeles. It was still able to land safely in Denver. And again, it's a 30-year-old Boeing, but again, the maintenance being done, how these were produced, I mean, something is just not working out here. So the wheel landed on a car and on an airport employee parking lot, breaking a car window, but no one was hurt. Thank goodness that was the only thing that happened. Again, another in Houston. Oh, when was this? In March, they had one. It was attempting to land when a tire rolled off the taxiway into the grass. It's just tires just coming off. Something is seriously going wrong here, and it just goes into from some of the other things, but um, I don't know if they're maintaining these jets or what's going on, but you have so many Boeing jets in the news. It's crazy. So I almost, I was joking around with my wife flew up to Utah the other week, and I told her, "Hey, are you using a Boeing jet?" And they weren't. But I asked beforehand, and that's something I would never do. I mean, jets flying has still been the safest way to travel, but it's getting crazy now. Um, so let's go to the next article. This is from the Epic Times. FAA orders inspections of 2,600 Boeing 737 airplanes over emergency oxygen mask. So they're saying the oxygen generators, when the masks fall down, are out of position. So even though they have the masks, um, they might not be able to deliver oxygen to passengers when they need it most, in loss of cabin pressure, or in the case of loss of cabin pressure. And that's because when you're that high up in the air, there's not enough oxygen in the air to support human life. So, that's why they have the oxygen masks that fall down. If those aren't working, that's a huge safety risk. Does that ever happen? Yeah. When the the window blew out of the Boeing jet a while back, that's the mask fell down to provide oxygen, and if those aren't working, that could be a huge safety issue as they try to figure out and land the jet safely. It's not like you can take a huge dive down right away. It's again one safety issue after another. Um, so it's an airworthiness directive. So legally enforceable orders so that Boeing has to comply, and all of their jets are going to be inspected. So it's to go in effect immediately, and is published on July 9th, so yesterday, and applies to quite a few different Boeing airplanes. They might be okay, but with all the problems that have been going on with Boeing, I mean, and I hate to sit there and add fuel to the fire for, what's been a great American company. They're having some serious issues, and this is, all about safety. Um, so moving on from Boeing, don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this is an interesting article. This came down. This is from the Biden administration. This is from Fox
Could you handle more clients?
Business News.
Silly question.
And to be honest, I think the article's a little partisan here. I'm not sure the Biden administration is doing the wrong thing here. So, again, the House, passed a bipartisan measure because the way this works is and just to give you an overall view of how this works. So the SEC under the Biden administration took a rule and extended it to cryptocurrency, basically saying that it's that banks have to track it on their balance sheets, which what they don't for most investments. So it just really throws off their balance sheets as things go up and down, and makes it so much harder to track. With the extra compliance issues, most banks are like, no, we're not going to secure cryptocurrency for our customers because it's too much of a headache. And whereas traditional investments, you don't have to do that. So the House of Representatives, in a bipartisan matter, passed this fix saying that, getting rid of this regulation that the SEC passed. So essentially the Biden administration through the SEC passed this rule cracking down on cryptocurrency. The House of Representatives passed a law to address it and went all the way to President Biden, and he vetoed it. So the question is, can they overturn President Biden's veto? So they, again, they're not sure that they have the votes to override it. Now, I'm not sure if this is a great idea one way or another. Cryptocurrency has its problems. There are plenty of concerns about it. Our banks are not the most secure right now, so they've been having a lot of issues. Do we want to just let them run wild with cryptocurrency? I talked to a financial advisor about this, and I asked him, "What do you think about cryptocurrency?" He's like, "I would never read for it." Probably a month or two ago, I had talked. There was an article I shared that some investment and financial advisors were starting to recommend cryptocurrency because there's so much interest in it. And he says, "We will never do that. The reason for it's all based on speculation. There's no productivity. There's nothing really to fall back in and say, hey, I own a part of this company and they're producing something, they're doing something." With crypto, it's very speculative, which means it's hard to look at the underlying value and say, look, this is what you're going to get. This is what it's based on. So who's right on that? I don't really know. I do think it's interesting to note this, that in general, I mean, the Biden administration tends to regulate industry more. I don't know if this is a bad regulation, though, so I might have plenty of people that disagree with me. But I think whenever we're looking at issues, we shouldn't have a knee-jerk reaction and says, oh, well, Biden vetoed this, so they're usually in the wrong, so we must disagree with it. That's not how we should be looking at issues, and especially issues that affect us in our own personal investing. I know plenty of people that are investing in cryptocurrency, and I say more power to them. It's their money; they can risk it how they want. And there's concerns that we're falling behind in crypto investments as a result. I don't know. I'm not an expert. So if you're interested, I would read up more. There are plenty of issues here. This article seems to think this is a really bad idea. But one of the concerns is Coinbase is the main holder of cryptocurrency. So most of the cryptocurrency exchanges go through Coinbase, and I think it's It's risky to have all of that under one roof or one company. If they get hacked, if they lose if their systems go down, that's going to affect America in a very damning way. But what they want to do is spread the risk out to banks that can develop and handle it. So it's much harder to go after cryptocurrency when it's spread out and controlled by banks that have more assets and can support the crypto market better. So I think the real question is, do we want that risk spread out to banks or not? So interesting article. If you're interested in digging into it more, um, next article I think is another good thing that the Biden administration has done or did recently. Why are they waiting this long to do it? Who knows? But they go after the Trump administration for not doing this sooner. Both Biden and Trump are trying to outdo each other, saying, "Hey, we're taxing foreign-made steel, and China's cheating by importing it through Mexico." So China is creating the steel, and instead of shipping it directly to the U.S., they're sending it to Mexico to then get to the U.S. Is this a huge thing? I think it's more hubbub and PR than anything else. But I do think it's good to close this loophole, especially with China, because they're going to cheat as much as they can. And so basically, what the Biden administration did is they're hitting products from Mexico that didn't originate from Mexico with an extra tariff. So that's the whole point of NAFTA, is to have free trade between Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. and have this free trade zone. But again, there are people that are cheating, taking advantage of this by, China being the worst, sending products directly to Mexico and then up to the U.S. Some of the others, India, Russia, Iran, are ones that are still importing goods through the U.S. through one of our closest trading partners, which is Mexico. And this is focused on steel and aluminum. And again, they're putting a 25% additional tariff on steel, 10% on aluminum. But when you look at the overall numbers, only 13% of what we're getting from Mexico falls under this category, and only 6% of aluminum. So I think it's good to close this loophole, put China on notice, but at the same time, it's not as big of an issue as they might want it to seem. So we are coming up on another break here, and when we come back, we're going to dive more into get away from what's happening with the administration and focus more on what's happening locally and throughout the country. So we'll be back in just a bit. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching here at Taxes Made Easy. So we've got some more interesting articles to cover here. The next article is, this is an interesting situation. When I mentioned it and touched on this before, this is when uh, either federally or locally we pass a tax, or a tax gets passed, mainly focuses on corporations or soaking the rich, etc. What happens with time? They either leave, it reduces productivity, it makes it harder for these very businesses that are struggling to continue to create corporate profits. So again, you have, anytime you tax something, you're making it harder for that activity to continue. So you usually get less of it. So, the power to tax is the power to destroy. So Illinois passed this new tax on corporate profits, and like always, the government is very want to do. They say, look, it's going to help school districts, it's going to help kids, and it's very hard to fight. And voters in general, they say, will support more taxes when it's to help kids. So again, typical political play. And they benefited from an uptick in local taxes on corporate profits in recent years, but the surge in revenue is expected to end. They're already seeing this. So again, short-term gain, long-term loss. So it's this short-sighted thinking that can really hurt. I was talking to someone just the other day, and they said, look, we should get rid of interest on all loans. It's like, well, you know how few loans would be available and how much harder you would make it for businesses? Yeah, it sounds good. Let's just get rid of interest. But, that gets rid of so many contracts, collections. That it would cause huge problems throughout the economy. An idea like that sounds simple, sounds good. People pay too much in interest. Well, that's what happens when people take out loans. That's how money operates. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand how it operates. So, a couple of issues. Federal COVID money is drying up, and this state of Illinois is adding $350 million to the education budget to try to plug the gap and the loss of funds. So what happened? You get this huge influx of money. It only lasts so long, and now the schools are spending that much and planning on that much money. Now they have to scale back, fire people, get rid of new programs, and it's smart thing for education is long-term stability. Whenever you get a few extra dollars, they tend to spend it, because if they don't spend it, they're not going to get the money moving forward. And so in the end, this is actually hurting the schools. So part of that is they're receiving fewer state dollars, and a lot of this is because the CPPRT, as this tax is called, doubled from $1.4 billion to $3 billion in funds for the schools. And then the state government said, oh, well, we have plenty of schools that are funded, so they gave them less state funds. And again, they don't give them more dollars whenever anything happens like this. It usually, this is typical, across state governments, that when they do open up another source of funding, it doesn't increase overall the amount of funding for the schools. They tend to take other dollars away and other support from the schools. Now, the way they set this up, it's based on a 2-year cycle. So their current funding is based on the funding from 2 years prior. So the CPPRT revenue is 2 calendar years behind, which means the amount of revenue just collected for 2025 is calculated from 2023. So they look at 2023, to determine how much they should get in 2025, so next school year. But that money isn't there anymore. It's already declined. So they probably did this expecting the revenues would go up and up and up, because you always get rosy budgeting from new taxes. Oh, it's going to help us so much, it's not going to go down. But of course, whenever you tax an activity, you get less of it. So, it's really creating a mess. It gets more into the weeds, different formulas and stuff going back and forth. But they're dealing with cutting cutting the budgets, sharpening the pencil to figure out a balanced budget. They'll postpone buying new buses, won't be able to backfill school staff positions, and in general have to cut back. And so they're seeing the handwriting on the wall. And that's why too often when you hear something that sounds too good to be true, hey, we'll just do this and it'll solve all of our issues. Let's just tax the rich. Let's just tax corporations. It might work in the short term, but in the long run, it usually hurts the economy. It hurts people. And in the case here in Illinois, it's creating a lot of budgetary issues for the schools as a result. So here's another article from the Epic Times. Got a lot of articles from them lately. The last article was from Chalkbeat Chicago. This whole idea that we're going to tax the rich, tax corporations, pay our budget, and corporations are hurting, especially smaller businesses. They're hurting. And so when I saw this, I'm like, look, this matches what I'm hearing. This matches what I'm seeing. Part of the reason that people got all kinds of COVID money, EIDL money, and those loans are coming due. People have to pay for these COVID loans, and they can't oftentimes. The expected growth was short-term. It led to more inflation than actual production. To throw all kinds of money at it didn't actually, giving people a whole bunch of money, but then inflation goes through the roof, prices go through the roof, everything becomes more expensive. The money doesn't go nearly as far as it was expected to. I'm sure it helped plenty of businesses, but you see plenty that are crashing and burning. So business bankruptcies up 34% in the first half of 2024. That is bad. That's a huge jump. That's one third increase off the previous year. We've all heard about Red Lobster, fresh fish, live lobster, filing massively for bankruptcy. The all-you-can-eat shrimp being their main selling point, but also they made it permanent, which is killing them. So, just going through the numbers a little bit, and this is according to the American Bankruptcy Institute. 3,000 commercial bankruptcies were filed in January through June, up 34% from last year. Small business filings rose 61%. That is scary. Small businesses really are the engine growth for jobs in our country. And, so they employ people, they put people to work, and these are people willing to go out and risk it. To have a 61% increase among small businesses is really tough. I mean, that's really bad news for our economy. Also with small businesses, I just had something. Yeah, these are your main street businesses that keep dollars locally. Whenever you have regulations, whenever you have more taxes, whenever you have a higher burden on companies, who pays for it the most? Not the large corporations. They can usually handle it. They usually have the funds. And sometimes they're championing increases in the minimum wage. They're championing some of these calls to look good to the public, but they know that when you increase regulation, you are wiping out the small business competition. You are crushing small businesses, and where does that go to? It goes to large corporations. Right where I am, they're building a new Home Depot. And I don't have anything in particular against Home Depot, but we have a local Ace store that's actually really cool, very connected to the community. and I love going there. They, little train going through the roof, or hanging from the ceiling. Some really cool things, and yet it's going to get hurt bad by this Home Depot being built less than 2 miles away from it. So so overall bankruptcy filings increased 15%. Individuals again increasing 15%, but this 61% of small businesses, that is a scary number. And again, reflects the growing economic strain on businesses and households. So Michael Hunter, vice president here of Epic Acer, expects an increase also of individual filings ahead. So when you have a lot of commercial filings, they're usually followed by individual filings. And with relative household income, high consumer debt levels, interest rates, and overall costs are going up and up. Again, the official rate of interest inflation is only 3%, but a lot of people are saying that's ridiculous. It's actually much higher than that, probably closer to 12%. And that's just my guesstimate from what I've been reading. So it gets more into the weeds as far as bankruptcies and stuff, but I want to kind of switch gears here, and really start focusing on people's personal assets and situations. So bankruptcies go right along with this. When people are struggling, bankruptcies go up. Is bankruptcy always the worst option? No. You can get rid of a lot of debt and get a fresh start in life by filing for a bankruptcy. So while a lot of people are in that situation where they feel like they need to file for bankruptcy, it can really help people. And there's plenty of times I refer people to bankruptcy attorneys. Just be careful if you have taxes. You can discharge taxes on bankruptcy, most taxes, not all, but you can discharge in bankruptcy if it's more than 2 years old. So if you're considering that and you have tax debt, call a bankruptcy attorney, specifically see what can be discharged in bankruptcy. If you can't discharge all of it or a large portion of it, you can either wait, or if you need to deal with the IRS or state sooner, that's when you would call a company like mine and we can help you with that. But we refer business back and forth between bankruptcy attorneys all the time. So again, a new poll came out from Hot Air, just kind of going over people's frustrations with the college education. We talked a lot about student loans and the increased costs. People are reacting. Over time, fewer people are going to college, and so it just, college education is more expensive than ever, and a lot of people are just saying it's not worth it. So 1/3 said they had expressed a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in our higher education system, while interest in entering the trades continue to be on the rise. And this is from U.S. News and World Report. I think if people, especially for young people, I tell them all the time, consider the trades. Consider the trades. You'll come out with no student loan debt. You'll be could be making a lot more money. And a lot of people are ended up working for themselves in this economy. So, especially the younger generation, they're finding a way to make money and really improve their financial situation. So, you've been having declining enrollment overall. As you have the student debt crisis, people are concerned about the high cost of tuition. And again, there are debates over some very controversial topics such as DEI and other issues where there's a lot of accusations that they're brainwashing people instead of actually educating them and helping them be informed to be critical thinkers. So alternatives are trade schools and taking apprenticeship programs. This is something that I think and and even the school my kids go to, they talk all the time about colleges. They have a college of the week that they post, and they, average income, blah blah blah. They don't talk about trade schools. They don't talk about other alternatives aside from college, and they see it as a success every time someone goes to college. But that's not for everybody. I was talking to someone whose son struggled through high school, hated it, and I'm like, look, what does he enjoy? He enjoys working on cars. We need more mechanics. They get paid pretty well too. And he's trying to get him into an apprenticeship program to learn to be a mechanic. It's not. You can do very well for yourself in a lot of these trades. So, how are colleges and universities doing? What are they doing about it? They're reimagining the entire college experience while tuition continues to go up. Um, and they're instead of focusing on building a student's academic resume in a way that helps them in their future job and career, they're focusing on having more of an experience through, how to protest, how to make your voice heard. That doesn't appeal to employers. So, and part of this is a little tongue-in-cheek here, but if students are going to focus on how to divest the school's revenue stream away from Israel or take over ransack buildings, there's not a lot of careers or job growth in that. And there's a lot of NGOs that are, or nonprofits that are funding things like this. Read an article yesterday that a lot of the funds for this are actually coming from Iran. Believe it or not, Iran has been funding a lot of these protests. George Soros as well, the Soros Foundation, has been funding these protests against Israel. And, so this is outside foreign influence on our college campuses that shouldn't be tolerated. I mean, if we were sitting there trying to foment revolts and protests in foreign countries, that would be considered foreign interference, and it would be a huge diplomatic issue. We look the other way when countries do it to us. So someone responded, he has a nephew already enrolled in a welding apprenticeship program, getting ready to graduate from high school. It's sponsored by a local labor union. A lot of these jobs through labor unions, and I have my issue with labor unions, but if you can get on with one and learn a trade, you can do very well for yourself. So, I mean, it's a great way to go. And again, more and more people aren't pushing their children to this. They aren't considering the different options. And welders will be flooded with work with new construction. As the demand for housing, the demand for construction is not going to go down. And so again, if you have students, you have people looking at this, consider the alternatives, because there are plenty of good alternatives. I spent too much time on this issue, but I have 3 young adults, and I'm pushing them to consider these very kinds of things, because it can really lead to some economic stability long term. And again, student loan debt is just crazy high. It's very prohibitive for many people to success in our economy. So when we come back, we're going to focus on the housing market. A lot of these same issues are going to carry right over to the housing market, and how to help people succeed and thrive in purchasing a home and getting on their feet for themselves and their families. Welcome back, everybody. Moving on to the last article for the day. And this is really going to do a deep dive into home ownership. And this really talks about some of the challenges facing them and how people are overcoming those challenges in a difficult market. So, some different ideas, some creative thinking here. And we're just going to dive into it, talking about how some of the challenges facing new home buyers and how people are overcoming it. So they use some personal examples here. 27-year-old Harrison in Fargo, North Dakota. He has a budget ceiling of $350,000 that he can afford. He has saved $30,000 in cash, but the median home leasing price is still $390,000 out of his reach. So he's doing everything right. He's got a paid off car, zero credit card debt, and no student loans. But he's still struggling to get into a home. Once you get into a home, then you have to worry about your property taxes going up, homeowners insurance premiums, and so he said he's worried he'll never be able to afford a home. So there are definitely advantages to homeownership. It's something to consider, but I've seen articles where people are saying, look, things are so crazy right now, renting might be the best short-term strategy, and investing your money for growth in the market. Who knows what's going to happen to the real estate market? I don't think things are going to get better anytime soon because there are so many people that want to buy and can't. So if things do improve slightly, the demand has been built up so much that I don't see it improving anytime soon. We're still spending money like drunken sailors and on our government. So and that's an insult to drunken sailors. But concern here is that you have holding off and being patient when things, all the indicators show that again, we still have to pay, we still have to do with a lot of inflationary measures because we're still spending money like crazy. It might be better to bite the bullet and get into a home if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, the last thing you want to do is get into a home and then lose it in a few years. So this guy's like, I'm not picky. All I'm looking for is a home with a good foundation and a safe neighborhood. Can't find it. And there's plenty of others going through this. So for millennials born from 81 to 96, or Generation Z born from 97 to 2012, face an uphill battle because of historically high prices. Just talked about how we just hit a new record for high prices. Stubborn inflation. So the cost of everything is going up. Interest rates are still high. A lot of personal debt. So I mean, this is someone. This example of Harrison. He's doing everything right. Paid off his car, zero credit card, no student loans. But if you don't have good spending habits, unemployment, property scarcity, and wages, spending habits is a big one. And I laugh at my nephew. I love him. He's a great kid. But my own kids, when they started working, of course, they wanted to eat out more. They wanted to do that. And, I let them do it as long as they're saving a good chunk of their money. But we do try to have them budget and track where their money is going. And so when they actually tracked it and saw how much they were spending on fast food, they pulled back and said, hold the phone here. This is where all my money's going. We can't do this. And my nephew was going out and buying a drink. So it wasn't like a Starbucks, but it was something like that where it was a flavored rich drink. And he's doing it every day. And he was spending about $4 or $5 a day on a drink. He didn't realize how much he was spending, and there's times he would go out and he'd get multiple drinks or he'd get a soda or whatever, and it turned out he was spending about $150 a month just on drinks and all the sugar, and so he realized, oh my goodness, change his habits. But if you don't budget, if you don't take a step back, you don't know where your money is going, and to make wise financial decisions, that's one of the first things is you have to control your spending. You can have hundreds of thousands of dollars and they can all be spent. I've seen millionaires with multi-million dollar incomes go through horrible, nasty divorces because one party would not control their spending. So this is a much bigger issue than we're kind of glossing over, which is why I'm taking a moment to talk about it. But having a good budget, having a good idea of where your money is going is absolutely key. So again, what used to be an affordable home, your average home, is now out of reach for most people. So they've come up with some clever ideas. So here's Daniel McDonald over here. And he's actually created a side business about teaching house hacking techniques to young home buyers. I'm sure he teaches it to others as well. But this is very interesting. So he found a technique that worked for him called house hacking. And he's actually created a small little business out of teaching this to other people. Pretty smart. So he was the winning bidder on a 1,600 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath duplex. And this is at the beginning of the pandemic, so prices are still relatively low. He rented out part of the property, saved the proceeds, and then bought another duplex a few streets away in 2022. So the whole idea of once you get into a property, you still don't have, there's a lot of tax savings in owning your own property. But until it starts creating a flow of money, which is called passive income, through renting out part of it, or you buy a separate property and turn that into a rental, that's where you really start getting passive income and start building wealth. But you have to be very careful because I do recommend being careful who you rent to. There are horror stories across the country of renters destroying properties. Be very familiar with what your rental laws are. But a lot of people are using properties as Airbnbs. And there's some pushback against that as well. But turning real estate assets into passive income is a huge benefit. And this is what the wealthy do. They'll rent properties and turn into passive income. You just have to, I highly recommend considering using a good property management company to help manage this and to protect your asset. So this whole idea of house hacking is generating passive income off a piece of the property while you still reside there. Even then, he's saying it could be 10 years or longer before him and his wife can afford a single family home in here. So he's got 2 sets of duplexes. Him and his wife live in one duplex, rent out the other half, and then he bought another duplex. But here he's still saying it could be 10 more years. So he lives in Beverly, Massachusetts, and he's saying the lowest price on Zillow in the whole city is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath for $565,000, and that's after a $15,000 price cut. So 3-bedroom, 1-bath going for over almost $600,000, and that's the lowest price on Zillow. So even then, he's getting his feet, he's building equity, he's doing a lot of the things right. But the problem today, if you're in that situation, I would wait, see what happens when the market goes down, which it will do. There will be ups and downs. Be ready to buy and take advantage of situations like that. The cost to move to a single family home as they start their family, $4,000 to $5,000 a month on mortgage payments. That's huge. So again, that's a huge burden. It's a huge thing to try to take on. I do see plenty of people paying mortgages like this in today's economy. When you buy into a new home, that's what it's looking at. And the IRS, if you do run into tax issues, they don't care that that's what people are paying today. They don't give you credit for these higher payments. So a lot of people purchasing homes, even though they're struggling, the IRS is so out of touch, and gets me irritated with what's actually happening to people, that they will not give you credit for your actual expenses and what's typical for a mortgage payment on a new home. And there's plenty of areas, if you go to Vegas, other areas where it might be $3,000, but the IRS will still only give you credit for usually maybe 2,000 to 3,000, and you'll usually end up upside down by $1,500 to $2,000 on newer homes. So a different example here, and I'm taking a lot of time with this because really it kind of highlights being creative, doing something different. And this guy, he had tons of student debt and living in a high-rise apartment, and he started a business called Sniff Spot. So this whole idea of small businesses being creative and having this entrepreneurial spirit, figuring stuff out where you normally don't have an answer, is really key here. So this allows homeowners to rent out their yards and outdoor spaces to owners who live in apartments and condominiums. Most people aren't in their yard all the time. Do you want someone else in your backyard? Maybe not. But if you rent it out, especially for people that have pets, dogs, you can earn passive income by renting out their yards while residing in their homes. Maybe they like dogs. They don't mind that dogs come and use it if they can set it up, or people can use, not like a dog park, but one person, they can come and still have their dog run around their yard, play, get some exercise, whereas a lot of people live in apartments, condominiums can't afford that. So it's a great way to get some passive income, use your property in a way that helps you out and helps you afford the increase in a cost of living. So again, being creative in this market, I love this. I see this happening, and I think these are great ideas. You can come up with your own ideas or use some of these other ideas. If you have space, you don't have to rent out a bedroom all the time, but this operates similar to Airbnb, but if you have a yard, if you have some space, or if you're looking at a cheaper place, maybe you want to buy a condo, but you have pets, look for someone offering this. It's hard to find an affordable home, much harder to find an affordable home that provides a great life for dogs. And pets are very important to people, even more so now that people are having fewer kids. It's just by the numbers, people having more pets, but you have to provide quality life for your pets. And it helps people cover their mortgage and real estate taxes. So again, you have Stephanie Douglas and Christina Moderas. They found friends to pool resources to purchase and co-own their first homes in Austin, Texas. So they did this in 13 and 15. Again, it's a lot more expensive now, but they got friends together, and they got a good contract in place. So this is very important to have a good contract. And they're teaching, just like the first gentleman, they're teaching their approach to others, and they call it Open House Austin, and then now Open House Education to expand the process nationwide, so people can invest in a home to help someone get into a home. But you do this in more of a cooperative manner, where friends that have money to invest can invest in equity, and it's just getting harder than ever. So here's a picture of them, and figuring something out, doing something different, to be able to get into the real estate market, start enjoying that increase in equity, get the tax benefits from homeownership, but at the same time not breaking the bank. So again, we touched on this yesterday. For June, prices hit an all-time high. The median home sale price climbed to $394,000. That means the average mortgage is pushing $3,000 a month. So less than the record high in April of 24, more than double from 3 years prior. So again, this is it pays to be creative. It pays to look for options. And one of the key things here is making wise decisions. But one of the key things that is mentioned here is have a good contract in place if you're going to do anything like this. Protect yourself. Have good homeowners insurance. that allows for these kinds of activities if anybody's coming onto your property. But it gets into the data here, and we're out of time. Oh my God, there's so much to talk about. But back in 84, the income to price of home ratio was at 3.49%. It climbed to 5.8 in 2022 with very, very high interest rates. Harvard just came out and said it was at 4.9%. So it's still really high, really tough out there for people. But consider options. If you're considering the market, you should be talking to mortgage brokers now that will help you prepare for homeownership. And you should, that's the thing, most people say, okay, well, now I'm going to do this. If you're not talking to someone early, you're not preparing. So if you have questions, give us a call. We have plenty of references here, and I hope this was helpful to you.